But talk about your pain, can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.
All right, let me get on screen. Okay, here I am. Hi, beautiful people. If this is your first time in my live, thank you for being here. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston, and every single Wednesday I come on 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to record my to record my podcast live with you all. And every Wednesday we talk about different subjects. And last week we discussed. My goal today is to not say a lot. Every time I'm editing, I'm just like, oh, it irritates me that I say so much. So if I start talking slower, it's because I'm trying to not use So I'm gonna if I say you guys can be like, oops, you said it. So I will try to keep that out of my vocabulary. That's my goal. But last week we discussed decluttering your mind. That is something that people struggle with, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of times is due to the clutter that's taking place in their mind. And so we talked about that. If you want to learn more about the different episodes, if you go to celestetherapist.com, you'll be able to find all the episodes there where we're talking about different things. Today's topic, we're discussing dealing with emotionally immature parents. And this is a topic that has come up over the years as I'm working with people. And there's a huge difference between emotional neglect and emotional abuse. And I think emotional neglect happens a lot where it's not intentional, right? Like where the parent is not emotionally available. The parent may not even be emotionally available for themselves. So it's really hard to be available for someone else if you can't even be available for yourself. So we're going to break down what that looks like and thinking about if that is something that you've struggled with in the past growing up, understanding it, because a lot of the ways that people are now has a lot to do with their parents' lack of emotional ability. And it's not about fault, right? It's about responsibility when it comes to healing. So this isn't about blaming parents. I know a lot of times people that I work with, a lot of their needs were provided, housing, clothes. And, once I start to see certain things and talk about the emotional availability, it's really hard a concept for people to understand. But I think it frees people when they start to understand their parents' lack of ability. So let's begin. Let's start. And so understanding what emotionally immature parents is. So emotionally, and for people that listen to me on the audio, I on the video component, which you could find on YouTube, I always do slides. I am a very visual learner, so it's always helpful for me when I'm able to kind of see things and hear it at the same time. So emotionally immature parents have difficulty managing their stress and regulating their emotions, which can lead to inconsistent and extreme behaviors. They may also have trouble seeing things from their children's perspective and show empathy. And these traits can negatively impact children's lives. So the big part in this piece right here about emotionally immature parents is that they have difficulties managing their own stress. And so because of their lack of being able to manage their own stress, growing up, people that grew up in this environment, they unfortunately didn't know what they were going to expect from their parents or that parent or caregiver, because there was such an extreme way of things being delivered, which definitely, like, people that, when I talk to people and get their history, when they talk about their parent and being this way with the inconsistency, I already know anxiety is a huge part of one of the areas that they may be struggling with, because you learn that things are unpredictable. And so early on, that level of anxiety and extreme that comes from that environment, if it's not dealt with, a lot of people struggle with that as an adult. So some signs that you may have had an emotionally immature parent: um, blaming others, so they may not take responsibilities for their own shortcomings. So a lot of times, if they were wrong about something, they will make an excuse for it. You feel gaslit by them. Growing up, defensiveness, they may be defensive and self-absorbed about things. There's this sense of entitlement where they may be entitled. Narcissists, definitely, or lack of integrity. Intrusiveness, they may be intrusive or controlling. And boundaries, this is a big one, they may be unable to respect boundaries. So here, these are some signs of an emotionally immature parent. I also want to say, as I'm talking about this, you may realize that you may fit this category as well as a parent. And again, this is not about, as I begin to talk about anything I talk about here, and if you notice patterns, it's not to make you feel bad, or it's really to help you see yourself and work on correcting the things that may be hindering you from a relationship with yourself or your child or other people. A lot of times we actually stand in the way of growth, of healing, of peace. And if things have happened growing up over the years, or even as an adult, sometimes, like if you were a victim in the past, it's really hard to take accountability because your system has kind of developed this victim mentality, especially if you've grown up with a parent that was emotionally unavailable. I just want people to keep that in mind. So that's us understanding, what an emotionally immature parent is and some signs. Now let's talk about the impact, because I have a couple of slides on the impact, because the impact is so deep. The impact of growing up with an emotionally immature parent. So, growing up with an emotionally immature parent can leave children feeling unseen and unheard. They may also find it difficulty to fully express their emotions. Emotionally maturity is defined in psychology as ability to control and express your emotions at an appropriate level. And when I say appropriate level, sometimes some of the emotions that people find themselves expressing, where it seems like the emotion doesn't fit the thing that's happening, but inside, because we can't see what's going on inside of people, inside, there's this like huge ball of fire, or I'm trying to think of a word to describe it, but what you're feeling inside may not fit what's going on outside, but it feels really, really hard. And so people that have kind of grown up in this system will find themselves being impacted by their emotional immaturity. That doesn't mean you can't work on it, but it's important to understand, because sometimes people don't understand this until they're an adult. Adult children of emotionally immature parents may become internalizers who sacrifice their own needs to care for others, or externalizers who are reactive and may look to others to soothe themselves. And so a lot of internalizers. So when we say internalizers, meaning that it feels like everything's about you. Something happens and then you internalize it, where it's like, oh, why are they doing this to me? You never think about, like, well, maybe they have something going on. Last week I gave an example of, if you have a friend that may have had a baby and dealing with postpartum depression, but having a hard time expressing it, and that they had a baby, but you find yourself internalizing their lack of communication with you and taking it personal, which ends up complicating the relationship. So, growing up with a parent that may have been emotionally unavailable, you may find yourself internalizing things. And then the externalizers, who are reactive and may look to others to soothe them, meaning that you're looking outside of yourself for your healing. And that can be a dangerous way of operating, because it's like you don't put the healing in your hands, you put it in somebody else's hands. And that's not okay, because then it can feel like it's a never ending cycle of pain. Some more impact of a children with emotionally immature parents. So low self-esteem. Children may feel unlovable, unheard, or misunderstood. A lot of anxiety and fear. This is a huge one. So children may never know what to expect from their parent, which can lead to high levels of anxiety. They may feel like they're constantly walking on eggshells. And even though this stuff can start as a child, when you're dealing with an emotionally immature parent, And it's kind of like, but I'm 20, but I'm 30, but I'm 40. Why do I still feel this way? Because you never worked on resetting your system into understanding that you don't have to no longer operate that way. A lot of times you can be like a whole adult with autonomy over your life, but it doesn't feel like it. Like you may find yourself afraid to ask for that promotion or raise, or afraid to talk to your partner about something, or even your child, because you grew up with such high levels of anxiety and you've never changed the trajectory of your system to understand that I no longer have to live that way. But a lot of times you don't realize it's happening. So I see a lot of anxiety and fear in people that grew up that way. Difficulty adapting. So children may have high rigidity in their thinking behavior. And when I say like rigidity, like kind of fixated thinking, um, and may struggle to adapt to new situations or ideas. They may also have a low stress tolerance and may react to anger or withdrawal. And so for this one, the difficulty adapting is a challenge because there's so many things that take place and change in life, in your life. And if you're so rigid in the way that you're thinking, part of your rigidity and your kind of fixated way of operating is out of survival, because you want to feel like you have control over everything that's happening when you just can't. But it helps you kind of in some moments like relieve some of that anxiety, because you know, like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be, this is the way things are supposed to happen. And stepping out of your comfort zone doesn't work, but being this way in a box doesn't help you long term either. It makes life really challenging. And then lack of empathy. Emotionally immature parents may lack empathy for their children and their internal experiences, and may have difficulty seeing them as individuals. Some more ways of thinking about the lack of empathy. You know, when children are going through things, unfortunately, if they don't have an emotionally responsive parent, they start to just keep it inside and make everything about in their head, and keep everything in their head. And it can be such a dangerous place if you don't have a place and an outlet to let it out. And so as you get older, you may become hyper independent, or not feel like you could depend on anybody to help you with the things you're going through. And so you silently suffer. And silently suffering can be such a hard place to be in. So let's think about some coping mechanisms, right? If you're somebody that you are finding some level of understanding, or realizing like, this is some of the ways that I may have grown up, and these are some of the ways I'm struggling, because when I'm working with people and I'm helping them make connections, a lot of times they don't even realize how the way they grew up. And your parent could have been amazing, been a great provider, but their lack of being able to be emotionally available to themselves, they can't give you something they can't even give to themselves. It's really hard. Sometimes we forget, like, our parents were born as a child, and they're human as well. Especially when we look at the parenting role as somebody that's supposed to do certain things, and when it doesn't happen, it's hard to sometimes accept. So let's think about like coping mechanisms, like how do you cope with it? And then I'm going to play a video where she talks about thinking about ways to cope. Because one of the things I always want people to take away from, whether it's a post or things I'm talking about, is that like I have power. A lot of times we don't feel like we have power to heal because things have been going on for so long that it just feels like this is the way life is going to be. And I always say, like, that's a hard way to operate in life if you feel like your healing is in somebody else's hands, or you feel like if they can just do this better or different, then I'll be okay. I really want people to take their healing back into their hands and utilize the power that they have. So these are some ways to think about coping. So seeking external support. So definitely connecting with trusted friends, family, therapists. I'm always going to recommend that. Group stuff is good too. Prioritizing your self care. So engaging in activities like journaling, exercising, to manage health. If you don't follow me on Instagram, I'm always talking about moving my body, and it's like a medicine for living life. And if you actually incorporate more movement, it could definitely, like, it's a natural response to like dealing with stress. But I understand sometimes you don't feel like it. And you cannot operate off of feelings when it comes to what you need. Sometimes you might say, like, I don't feel motivated. You cannot operate life off of whether you feel like doing it or whether you're motivated, because motivation doesn't just pop up like that. Motivation happens as you begin to do the work. So, one of the ways to deal with some of this turmoil is prioritizing your self care. Setting healthy boundaries. So, boundaries are important in any relationship, but you may need to set some targets when you're interacting with that parent. And managing your expectations. A lot of times we have high expectations for our parents and caregivers because they got this title, right, of being our parent or caregiver. But at the end of the day, they're human. And at the end of the day, like, I can't keep waiting for them to change. I have to think about, like, what am I willing to accept or not accept? Like, you have to set the tone for what you want in life. And I know a lot of times this is the first time people are thinking or hearing it this way. And I'm hoping, like, it plants a seed, even if it's not blossoming what I'm saying. Hopefully that a seed is planting. And then building your self-worth. So you may have been primed to hypersensitivity um, to your parents' needs and emotions, making you highly reactive to their emotional state. The part about building self-worth, um, the part about building self-worth is important. Oh wait, you guys lost me. Hold on. Okay. The part about building self-worth is so important because you when you know who you are, you're not going to allow anybody to tell you anything different. Not just with a parent, with a friend, a family, a partner. And a lot of times people's self-worth has been like damaged because of the things that have happened, especially as a child. And so with you being so reactive to their emotional response, you may find yourself this way in a relationship too, where maybe your partner is not abusive, but let's say that they're having a bad day, and they're entitled to having a bad day, but you're very you react strongly to that because growing up, that's what happened. And so, unfortunately, your system is seeing that person not really talking, having a bad day, and it automatically goes into, oh my gosh, they're mad at you. When they may not even be mad at you, where it may literally be that they're just having a bad day. And so, being able to understand how you've been affected in that moment where your mind is trying to go into, oh my gosh, they're upset with me, instead of you allowing your mind to go there, what can happen is you can say, like, nope, they never said that. Like, really start to bring logic into the situation as you're trying to analyze it, because the body keeps the score. It remembers these things, it holds on to pain. And so anytime we have similar situations taking place that have taken place in the past, we can literally feel like it's happening all over again. Like, you could watch a movie and get scared in that moment. It's like a scary scene, and you'll get scared in that moment, but then afterwards you'll be like, "Oh, that was just the movie. I'm fine." Like, your mind can reset. When you're dealing with an emotion that is similar, your mind can go there as if you were watching a movie, but like, you also have the ability to reset and be like, "Nope, that was a memory that I just had. It's not what's going on now." Like, you have the ability to do that if you really work on practicing it. But a lot of times we are so consumed by, like, whether it's our phones, job, work, like life, that we're not processing what's happening. And these scenes from our history are replaying, and we're not doing anything about it. And that's why a lot of times we find ourselves struggling. So the last thing I'm gonna show you two books that are very relatable that can help think about that. But we're gonna watch this 3-minute clip about how to deal with emotionally immature parents, because not only have I said it, but now you're gonna hear Dr. the holistic psychologist share in 3 minutes how to work on that as well. All right. Share.
First. Now, before I get into the steps, I want you to know you can't change your parent, really. That's the hardest part of all of this. But I'm going to teach you things you can do to protect your energy, to help yourself heal, and to build your own life. And remember that this is a process. So let's get into the steps for dealing with an emotionally immature parent. Step one, picture them as a small child. When they're having a tantrum or getting really defensive, you want to actually picture them as a 6-year-old child. This will help you stay calm in your body and remind you that even though your parent might be 50, 60, or 70 years old, their developmental age is different from their actual age. A lot of people benefit from this because it helps them zoom out and to see their behavior for what it is. Step two, manage your expectations. This is one of the most important steps. Emotionally immature parents can't give their children what they need. This means that we have to accept that they just can't support us in some ways. And by knowing this, you'll slowly put less and less pressure on your parent to be someone that they can't be and start to release some of your own resentment. So I'll give you an example of this. Let's say you know your emotionally immature parent really struggles to acknowledge your accomplishments and is pretty critical. You go to work, get a promotion, and you're feeling really excited. You want to call your mom to tell her about it, and you really want her to share in that excitement. But you realize that your mom probably isn't going to share in that excitement. She might even say something negative about your workload or your new boss. So you take a minute to consciously choose if you actually want to call and tell her. The more realistic you become, the less crushed you'll be when your parent behaves in the typical way that they do. Step three, set clear boundaries. The most important thing you can have with an emotionally immature parent is clear boundaries. Emotionally immature parents tend to be detached, critical, or demanding because they don't know healthier ways to express themselves. So it's important that you don't engage and don't play into their cycles. I'll give you an example of this. If it's taken you a while to return their calls, and when you do call them back, they say something like, "Oh, wow, haven't heard from you in a while," you can just respond with, "I know, I've been busy." You want to remain calm and non-reactive. One thing about most emotionally mature people is they really crave that drama and chaos in their connections. So setting boundaries allows you to remove yourself from that. I also want to note, some emotionally immature parents are abusive, and that some people do need to go no contact. It's really painful, but some people just can't have a relationship for their own emotional health. So I do want to acknowledge that reality. Okay, step four, let yourself grieve. Growing up with an emotionally immature parent is really painful. There's a grieving period where you face the reality that your parents couldn't give you what you truly needed. Allow yourself to feel whatever comes up and know you are not alone. Let your inner child feel their pain and acknowledge it. As you grieve, you can slowly process it and begin to heal. And the best way to do this is to write your inner child a letter, letting them know that you recognize all that they've been through and that you're going to be there for them now. And remember, no one else is going to see this letter. So really allow yourself to write whatever comes up. I really hope this episode gave you a helpful start to the process of learning new ways to respond to your parent and to having even more compassion for yourself. I want to hear.
So, okay, I'm back. So that was the holistic psychologist, and I'll put the links to what I shared in the show notes. But some of the takeaways is letting yourself grieve, and I talk about grieving a lot, and it comes up when people pass away from Earth, but we don't really think about it, grieving the life that we deserved or that we needed. And so when it comes to trying to make peace and heal from, that process of understanding, like, what, like I really didn't get the emotional connectedness that I needed or that I deserved, like my parent was not available, it's okay to grieve that. The clear boundaries is important. If you don't set boundaries, how will they know to change? And you will keep expecting something different and crushing yourself every time. So I'm going to share two books, and I'll read them. I'll let you know, for the audio listeners, but Dr. Nicole, that's who we just heard from. She has a great book called How to Do the Work. She has other books as well. And then this book right here is a good one if you wanted to work on exploring more of growing up with an emotionally immature parent. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, How to Heal from Distant, Rejecting, or Self-Involved Parents. And that's by Dr. Lindsay Gibson. So these are really two good books. One's more like a workbook with a holistic psychologist. The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, that's a psychologist who is kind of sharing different scenarios around the different kind of parents that may have not been available emotionally, because it's not like a cookie cutter. It's not like, oh, the parent that was emotionally unavailable, they all look the same. It kind of presents differently. And she does a really good job at breaking it down. And I'm sure, like, if this is something that you've struggled with, you'll be able to read it and be like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Right. Because I think sometimes, especially if we're isolating, we're keeping it to ourselves, we don't have language, we think it's just us, when I promise you it's not. A lot of people kind of share that story, and healing is available to us all. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this makes sense. I always tell people, like, if anything I ever say resonates for you, understand you have power to create change, but you have to work on having faith to believe in yourself. And if you want to learn more about me and the podcast, you can go to celestetherapist.com. And if you want to learn more about the practice, the wellness practice, you can just go to www.stwyt.com. Again, if you want to learn more about my wellness practice, you can go to www.stwyt.com. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
But talk about your pain, can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and